Frustrating. If I had to sum up this little painting in one word, it would be frustrating. And that is for various reasons. But before we get to that, a quick thank you to today's video sponsor Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that lets you build a beautiful online presence and run your business. So some of you suggested that I paint some of my favorite movie characters for a change. And I thought, why not? That actually sounds like a lot of fun. Well, as it turns out, only in theory. When I started thinking about this idea and about some of my favorite movie characters and actors, one name immediately came to my mind: Peter Venkman. And not only is he one of my favorite movie characters, but Bill Murray is one of my absolute favorite actors, who also stars in another of my all-time favorite movies, by the way, which is Groundhog Day. So for the first entry in this series, I thought, Peter Venkman it is. And I can't believe that I'm saying this, but just in case, for all the younger viewers out there who might not know who that is, if you really want to treat yourself to something, or if you ever want to be friends with me, go and watch the original Ghostbusters movies. They are absolutely amazing. So I was actually super excited to get started on this, because it's not only a welcome change to the daily gallery work I'm doing, but the original Ghostbusters movie, like a lot of 80s movies and media, has a special place in my heart. I have so many fond memories of these things, and I mean, who doesn't love a little nostalgia every now and then? But already, the first step in the creation of this painting, which was finding a proper reference photo to paint from, proved to be much harder than I anticipated. As a matter of fact, I had to paint this little painting from what is probably the worst and most unusable reference material that you can think of. And to show you that I'm not even exaggerating, take a look at this. Yeah, exactly. And right there I knew that this was gonna be one of those paintings. I really would have preferred to work from a decent reference photo, especially when painting something so dear to my heart, but a little spoiler alert, the painting still turned out pretty cool in the end, but it was challenging. But painting this little portrait was also challenging in a few different ways, and they all fall in one of two categories: either opportunity costs or expectations. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the materials I'm using for this painting. As a painting surface, I use a small ready-to-paint-on stretch canvas, which is one of the simplest and most convenient options for a quick painting. It's stretched, it's primed, and you can immediately get to work. It's pretty straightforward. I'm painting with oil paints from Rembrandt, Sennelier and Schminke, and as for brushes, I'm using a very simple and basic set of brushes. A mixture of flat and round brushes, but my new favorite brushes, by the way, are from Trekell, which is also what you can see me paint with right now. I'm not sure what it is about them, but in my honest opinion, I think they are just as good as brushes 10 times the price. So I can highly recommend them, and I've actually included a link to them in the description below for anyone who's curious. So since the painting process for this is pretty straightforward, I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about it. It's basically the 5-step process that I use for most of my studies, which I actually made a video about. So if you haven't seen that, make sure to give it a watch. But the basic process is that I start with the darkest and most difficult areas of the face, and then I work my way to the background. So why was this painting so hard? Well, painting familiar faces or trying to capture likeness comes with a whole bunch of its own problems, which, combined with bad reference material and high expectations, is a perfect recipe for frustration. The problem with capturing likeness in a painting is that it usually comes at a cost, and sometimes it's even diametrically opposed to painting realistically, meaning that the more realistic you try to paint a portrait, the less it looks like the person you are trying to paint. Which might sound counterintuitive, but have you ever noticed how sometimes a sketch or a caricature looks even more like the person than an actual photo does? And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. A highly rendered painting doesn't give us much room for interpretation. Everything is clearly defined, and if you didn't manage to be 100% accurate, even the smallest errors in your proportions will add up and eventually kill the likeness. But a sketch or a caricature, on the other hand, leaves you with a lot of room to interpret what you're seeing. they manage to capture the most important parts that make up the likeness, but they also allow for the viewer to complete what they are seeing in their brain. And our brain is not only able to interpret and error correct what we are seeing, but it's also pretty good at it. We are trained to see things, and we are especially trained to see things we are familiar with. And that error correction system we have works best if what we're looking at gives us enough room and fuzziness and uncertainty to interpret what we're seeing. You can also think of it this way. You might be able to spot Bill Murray's face on a piece of toast, because it's fuzzy. But you will never be able to see a piece of toast when you look at a picture of Bill Murray. Well, that's a weird analogy, but you get the point. When painting likeness, vagueness is your friend. Especially if you're not able to be 100% accurate. Which brings me back to this here. Just to remind you, as you can see, being accurate wasn't in the cards for me. Which also means that a high degree of realism wasn't really an option. So I decided to stay as vague as I could, while also approaching the painting a bit like a caricature. Which actually was a pretty good game plan, all things considered. That is, until what I was painting started clashing with my own biases and expectations. But before we get to that, I want to quickly thank today's video sponsor Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for my online portfolio for years now, so when Squarespace recently reached out to sponsor the channel, it was an absolute no-brainer. Having a great online portfolio where you can showcase your art is a must for every artist today, and Squarespace is perfect for that. But Squarespace also offers an integrated commerce and shop system that is incredibly easy and intuitive to use. And I can't even begin to tell you how much easier this made my life in recent years. Launching products and processing orders couldn't be easier, so if you are looking to make your own website or want to have a great but easy to manage online store, check out squarespace.com for a free trial or go to squarespace.com/alpayaffair to save 10% of your first purchase for a website or domain. So after I introduced the background, I started to become a bit frustrated. The fact that I knew that I could do better with better reference already had left a bad taste in my mouth. But the lack of complexity, resulting from the fact that I didn't have much information while painting, left me really unsatisfied. I mean, the painting on its own doesn't look bad or wrong at this point. It's just not what I had imagined. As I said before, painting something you are emotionally attached to comes with its own set of challenges. And I have a lot of fond memories of this movie, and for that reason alone, I of course wanted it to turn out great. But that is also one of the biggest problems here. When it comes to creating art, biases and expectations are our worst enemy. The end result can never live up to our expectations, no matter how good the reference. So it's actually best to not have any expectations to begin with. It's like standing in your kitchen and looking at all the ingredients to make pasta with tomato sauce, and getting annoyed by the fact that you don't have the ingredients to make pasta with meatballs. I mean, you can complain and whine all you want, but the tomatoes aren't magically going to turn into meatballs. It's not gonna happen. So you might as well just settle for pasta with tomatoes and try to make the best out of the ingredients you have. And that is also what I did in the end. I accepted the fact that this wasn't going to be the painting that I envisioned, that the likeness couldn't be as spot on as I wanted, and that the painting wouldn't look as complex as I'm used to. But guess what? That's okay. Because in the end, I think it still turned out to be a pretty cool painting. And even more importantly, it does exactly what it is supposed to, which is capture nostalgia and let us remember some of the fond memories we have of these characters and movies. And as frustrating as it was, to be honest, I still had a huge smile on my face while painting. So at the end of the day, we came, we saw, and we kicked ass, to say it like Peter Venkman. And with that, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and yeah, have a good one.